If you'd had an observer, you would have been able to see a factory with a tech lab. And clearly, that means he's going for siege tanks. I guess you could say siege tanks or Thors, if you see an armory. But if he's going for siege tanks, that means you've got to know places like this are going to be vulnerable. On this particular map, siege tanks right here are absolutely deadly, because there's no way your ground forces can get to them. They have to kind of go around this long path, so they can just wail away at your expansion. So, if you did scout and see this factory, you might think, well, I've got this as a vulnerability in my base, so I'd like to move my army out, move it either to here or even somewhere closer to his choke right here, and keep him contained. Don't let him push up to that place because you know it's a vulnerability. Also, one thing I want to point out is always be looking a little bit, one step ahead of the game, and a clear next step that you're going to want to take eventually, not necessarily soon, but eventually, is you're going to want to get this third. So while you've got units just sitting here, go ahead and bust down the rocks. No big deal. So here he is sieging up. This is a really deadly spot to be in, because if he can put his bio army right here and act as a buffer between your units, your gateway units, and his tanks, it's just hard to bust. Gets kind of a lucky scan on the observer. I don't think he was trying to do that. But I do like your reaction to this. Staying calm, knowing, hey, I need to get more units out, do a couple pumps of my warp gate, and then go attack. You're not panicking. I think that's a really smart move. Also, you're not pulling all your probes away. I think some of those probes are safe. Yeah, like these probes at least are safe. So, but certainly there is a time when you need to go in there and take them out. Definitely, if you're going in here like this, be thinking about army positioning. You're going to want these immortals to take out the siege tanks, and the immortals also would be a good damage sponge for taking the first couple siege tank shots. So I think having, maybe not necessarily suiciding the immortals straight in the front, but having them close to the front, maybe behind these zealots, would be a good spot for the immortals. I think these immortals were in decent spots for this encounter anyway. Although, I believe those force fields actually hurt you a little bit. Let's watch this again. Alright, let's watch. I'm gonna watch just these force fields right now. So, force fields doing not much. Not really. Force fields are not really doing much, because you're not actually trapping any of these units, and you're really just preventing your own zealots from approaching. So those weren't my favorite force fields. Also, hold on, let me see if a guardian shield went up. I think you had, yeah, you had enough energy for a guardian shield. So that's another, relatively minor mistake. But you definitely want to get those guardian shields up. But overall, pretty nice defense. Definitely, definitely breaking his defense. And I would say, anytime you can look at what, you have to assume was his entire army. He was on one base, and so you just killed his entire army, and you've got a substantial lead. You've got 2 immortals, 6 stalkers, and a zealot. I would at least think about a counterattack here. Maybe not necessarily totally commit to a counterattack, but just show at least a little force at his front door. Maybe you can scare this expansion into not going down as quickly. Let me see your scouting. Nope, still no scouting. But yeah, at least bring those units up and see what is here. But don't ever commit to the attack. When you just want a battle like this, a lot of good players would say, well, you're ahead. What do you do when you're ahead? You get more ahead. And the way you get more ahead is not by just going and suiciding all these units up. So I don't want to tell you to do that, but you've got pretty good production. You've got a decent sized army. I have the army tab up right now, and clearly you've got quite an advantage in terms of army over him. And you've got an expansion. So you're in a really good spot. And another observer. So I think that counterattack, I don't know if you could have won with that. It's entirely possible though, because the siege tank wouldn't. There was only one siege tank and several marines and maybe a marauder or two. That could have been a win. So yeah, just anytime you win a big battle like that, where you know clearly you're facing his entire army, look at your army, think about what you could do with it, and then go see what you can do. But don't always commit. You don't have to commit to the attack. Okay, now I'm coming back to these warp gates. This is the part of the game where both of your bases are getting nicely saturated. This one's still got a ways to go, and you know, I'd like to see more probes being produced here. You can always be making more probes, get more money. More money equals more dudes. But here's the time where we're going to start seeing your money kind of skyrocket a little bit, and that's because you're not adjusting your production ability based on how many bases you're on. So you had these 3 warp gates and a robotics facility up on one base, and then when you went to the second base, you got a forge and a robotics bay for Colossus. When really you could afford to throw down at least 2 or 3 more warp gates and be able to just pump out a ton of units at once, being able to really quickly reinforce. Your macro is staying good for now, quite good for now, but in a minute we're going to see the money start to get pretty high. Also, small mistakes like this, I don't need to point it out to you really, but you know, just having 2 guys on gas instead of 3 can hurt. You might not notice it in the game, but it's affecting you either way, whether you notice it or not. So again, going back to scouting, why not just push in with this observer, in my opinion? Well, I guess he does have a Raven, so that's definitely a consideration, because you could just straight up lose your observer from that. However, you know, why not poke around the sides here, see what you can see. You'd at least, if you poke around, you'd at least be able to come around here and see all his production facilities, see what's going on. You get to see a tech lab and factory with a tech lab on it, or starport with tech lab, factory with tech lab. You could even, since there's no turrets right now, you could even go into the main and could have seen this Ghost Academy or something like that. Just try to be a little more active with your scout. Definitely. Okay, so now is the time where the macros is starting to run away. Your income is higher than it's been the entire game, and money is going to start getting higher and higher. And there's going to be an engagement in a couple minutes that I think that's when that engagement happens, is when the money really starts to get high. This is really interesting, by the way, sticking a planetary fortress like that. And I do like the response to that. I believe you did see the planetary fortress. Yeah, you have seen the planetary fortress. And so I love the reaction of getting another Nexus, because you know he's putting a planetary fortress down here. He's not planning on moving out. He is just staying right there, gonna sit on 2 bases for quite a while. He's actually quite oversaturated there, and he's almost mined out in his main. So you're in a pretty decent spot. You've got more minerals left in your main, a lot left at your expansion. You're getting 3rd. So starting to mass up this Colossus. Do you have thermal lance? Yes, you do. Okay, so this is a timing attack. Yay! You got approaching a critical mass of Colossus. You got the thermal lance, and then this is probably the biggest mistake of the game, is attacking into what he is clearly telling you is, this is where I want to defend. He's saying, I'm putting down siege tanks, I'm putting down a planetary fortress, and I'm putting all of my troops right here. He says, if I want to engage you, I want to engage you right here. I want your army right there, and he can just pummel you with these siege tanks, soak up tons of damage with the planetary fortress, and it is just bad, bad news for any army that tries to get through there. So, what I would like to see, well, let's just watch this battle first. Siege tanks. He doesn't even have all his siege tanks totally in position, but they're still doing a lot of damage. Planetary fortress. Killing, killing, killing. Yeah, if those siege tanks were positioned better, they would have done even quite a bit more. But clearly, you can see this is not a good engagement. Let's, I'm going to back up a bit before this battle. Let's just see what's happening on the units lost tab.